Hi, I'm Katie Johnson. Welcome back to another layout video. I do these videos because if you're like me, having a plan to start with, like having a roadmap if you're going on a trip, having a plan to start with just helps me focus my creative energies. Let me know in the comments if you're like me. A lot of times I'll stand in front of my shelves and I'll look at all the stuff I have and I just get overwhelmed. But if I can look at this and say, oh, here's a simple layout, sentiment goes down low, and I put two things there, and then I start looking at the stuff I have. And maybe I don't have those two things. Maybe I have two stars. Maybe I have two hearts. Maybe it's a wedding or Valentine's Day coming up. But it gives me a plan, a place to focus. And so what we have been doing recently is saying, here's a simple layout. Let's make it. Now, what can I do to that to step it up? And so I added, this was what, 2-3 weeks ago. I'll add the link to this. If I remember, I'll go to the directions and the description of this video and add the link. But then we just added a layer. And of course, when you look at something like that, it doesn't have to be that shape. You could use hearts, stars, whatever you want, little flowers. It doesn't have to be just a plain piece of paper. It could be fancy paper. It could be glitter paper. It could be embossed. It could be designer paper. So today we're going to do something similar, but we're going to change things up just a little bit. I want to show the versatility of the layout in that I'm going to use exactly the same parts, but we're going to show that it can be vertical or horizontal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my final project is going to have a image that is a vertical floral spray. And of course, as I said, you can change up the images. You can also change up the sizes, and you can also change up whether it's stamped or whether it's die cut. So we're going to do all of that today. As you see me constructing these things, what you're going to see is that they're kind of sticky. That's because when I make my layout book, this little thing from the dollar store, it's only got a certain thickness to it. And as I start filling up that book, it doesn't work very well if I use our cardstock because it's kind of thick. So instead, I just use Post-it notes. So we're going to put one butterfly up here, and we're going to have one butterfly down there. Similar layout over there, sentiment down low, vertical floral spray, and then we're going to add a couple of butterflies. So we'll see where these end up. This is my plan, and of course it's just a general plan, so we'll see what happens as we start to do the construction. I'm going to move these off to where I can easily reach them and pull them in for reference, but let's pull in the product we're going to use. So I'm going to focus on these two things. I've got two bundles here, and by the way, I'm filming this in June of 24, and guys, right now there is an awesome sale on bundles. When I say bundle, for those of you who don't know, so Stampin' Up! Sells coordinating product, stamp sets and dies, and you can buy them individually. You might decide you just want the dies, just want the stamp set. If you buy them together, Stampin' Up! Will bundle them and give you a 10% discount for buying both of them. And right now, during June, they're adding an extra 10% on top of that. So I'll also put the link to that. Ooh, now I got to remember 2 different links. But the other link I will put in will be the link to the bundle sale, so you can just check out all the awesome stuff. But I'm using 2 bundles today. I'm using Thoughtful Wishes because I want this tall vertical spray. And then I'm also using, because I am going to use butterflies on mine, but I'm using sketched butterflies because there is a die set that works for that as well. So we're going to use this butterfly stamp, and we are going to use this flower spray right here. So remember I said we're going to make a vertical version and we're going to make a horizontal version. Now in the process of making these, I'm going to end up with 4 cards by the time that we're done. And 2 of them are going to be stamped and 2 of them are going to have die cuts. I'm going to add, before I put my butterflies on here, I'm going to add my sentiment. And I'll tell you, I had so much trouble figuring out which sentiment to use on here. The sketch butterflies, awesome. It's got a thinking of you, a birthday, a thank you. Very generic, good set of all-around sentiments. This one has dearest friend, thinking of you fondly, I appreciate you, you make life better, thanks, missing you. And I love a sentiment that's got this combination of fonts, you know, block letters and scripty letters. So it was really hard to choose, but what I did choose this time was I just chose thinking of you. Put my sentiment down low over here, and I'm going to think for just a moment about where those butterflies are going. And I don't know, wherever I put my sentiment, I'm going to restrict the position of the butterfly. we'll see. Okay, so let's see where these butterflies can go. This one can go right down here. And then this one can go right up here. I'm going to color it. We're going to see what that looks like. Okay, so you see me with two different markers here. I'm just going to do a real quick marker lesson. If you've heard this before, then just fast forward and get to the part where I actually do the rest of the card construction. Stampin' Up! Sells two kinds of markers. One is the blends. This is an alcohol-based. They come as a pair of two, a light and a dark, so that you can do all kinds of beautiful, gorgeous shading. You buy them in pairs. The round ones are the classic markers. These are water-based markers, which, by the way, can be filled with the refills from the ink pads. These things come in color sets. I brought this one out because I have a use for it later in the project. It matches the paper that I'm going to use as the base for the card. And by the way, matching color, that is one of the reasons early on that really sold me on Stampin' Up! Product, was the fact that you can get all your colored product to match. And that was extremely important to me versus going into different stores and picking up pretty papers that I saw. Okay, so let's get on to the coloring now. So I just colored this quickly, and I didn't use the combination of the two different blends. This is not a coloring video. This is just a video about construction. All right, I've pulled out two more colors, and if you're curious about the colors, this one I used a brighter green than the one I'm going to use for the base. What did I use here? This is Granny Apple Green, and this one I have pulled out. Ooh, look at that, a little sparkly. This one I pulled out Berry Burst as a darker pinky color, and then I pulled out Fresh Freesia as a little bit of a lighter purple. This is going to be a beautiful combination on my butterflies, but I am going to speak to you briefly about coloring this type of image up here, the thistle. So there's not really any space to contain my art or my color. Like over here, I can color inside the lines. Well, there's not really lines to color inside of here. There's just lines. But what I'm going to do on this one, check out this. This is going to look cool. Let me make a couple and you'll see what I'm doing. So I'm just kind of following what those lines are doing, not being careful at all. Well, I'm being careful, but not being precise about trying to stay within the lines. This is a thistle. They're bright and pokey. So look what it looks like when I just come on and kind of add the colors as lines. That really looks good. That really looks awesome. It looks like a little prickly, pokey thistle. So there. Now, as long as I've got this out, I'm going to color a little bit inside the lines for the butterflies. Finish the coloring now, and so I've got these two ready to go for our first version that is just stamped. But my next version was going to be die cuts, and so as long as I had the markers out, I took the time to color these. So these are ready for our next set of two. Remember, we're going to have 4 cards by the time we're done. All right, so we've got mostly everything ready to go here. This just needs to go on the base. At this halfway point in the video, I hope you can see the value of having like a basic plan. I did use butterflies, but you could put anything you want. You could do little flowers, you could do stars. It doesn't have to be these shapes. And you can see how you just go for any floral spray you want. It doesn't have to be the one that I used on here. Let's put these two off for the side for just a moment, and let's bring in 2 more pieces of paper, and let's use some die cuts in place of these stamped images. So I had my butterflies ready to go. Now I'm also going to layer up my sentiment, and here is why I kept this marker in, because when you put white piece of paper on white, it doesn't stand out a whole lot. I am going to put it up on dimensionals, but it still will stand out a little bit more if you just add a little bit of ink framing around the label. It's very subtle, but it really helps it to stand out. See what a difference that makes. And the reason I chose the darker ink color is because this is going to match the card base that I use, the Mossy Meadow, and it's also going to match the ink that I used. All right, so we made these two cards with stamped images. Now we're working on the die cut images. The butterflies came from the Sketched Butterfly Bundle, which has the stamp set and the matching dies to cut out the butterfly. The foliage that you saw me stamp on the cards, as well as the sentiment that I'm using here, these sentiments came from the Thoughtful Wishes bundle. So here's the stamp that we were using, and here's the matching dies. Now this is interesting because some of these dies you can see right here are framelits, so they would cut out that stamped image. Some of them actually just cut out shapes. I thought about doing this stamped image and just cutting it out to raise it up, but actually I'm going to play with this because I got something fun to show you. So look here. Here is the stamped flower, okay? And of course, if I just pop that on there, well, now the whole thing is green, right? So, okay, that's fine. So I stamped it, or I die cut it also out of a colored image over here. But for funsies, look what you can do. And you got to have the right tool. I'm going to show you with this one right here. But you can come off and cut off each of these little flowers. And I'm only going to do a few because I got a couple just all ready to go. I'm just going to show you. Now, if you're going to do, maybe you're thinking ahead and you know exactly what I'm going to do. But if you're going to do this, there's 8 flowers on here and they're not all the same size and they're not all the same shape. So you have to be really careful in cutting them out to make sure that you get the right one on the right colored head on the right green head. But just pop a little teeny dot of adhesive on the green one. And then you need to carefully pick up the colored one, and that's where this awesome tool comes in. This is the Take Your Pick tool. You've seen me use that pokey end a lot. By the way, it's got a little spatula end. That's cool too, right? See those little sticky out things? Little projections. And there's a groove right here, and it locks, so you just rotate it so that the projections go into the groove. Close it up, twist it, and now it's locked into place. The other end, though, this is a putty end. Perfect for picking up little things like this and sticking them down on top of the head, and then just use my finger and hold it in place for a moment till the glue catches. Isn't that awesome? Super amazing. So then you can come up with really pretty things like this one right here, or this one right here. And I say that because they're slightly different because I used different colors. Remember, the 2 colors I used on here were Berry Burst and Fresh Freesia, so I used the 2 different papers, and I honestly can't decide which one I'm going to use where. So we're just going to use one on each of them and see what we end up with. All right, so now we need the trick of gluing things on. So let me have just a minute. I'm probably going to speed this up for you, but if you're looking at this and envisioning yourself doing this, this is a bit of a challenge to get the adhesive on here. I do recommend another tool that Stampin' Up! Has. You want to either use scrap paper or wax paper, or Stampin' Up! Sells this silicone craft sheet, which is perfect because then you can just come along, and if any adhesive does leak off the sides, it won't mess up the paper that you're working on, your placemat. If you have tried doing this in the past and you are impressed by that, because it is challenging, right? You got to get just the right amount of pressure on here. This is amazing glue. Love it. Absolutely love it. Stampin' Up! Does sell that. But yeah, you got to get the right pressure from your hand. So it takes some practice. I got a bunch of these, and then just try it a little bit on your own and see how you get it. This glue is great. It's got a great hold. You saw me using this tool. I'd love to sell you one of these, but Stampin' Up! Doesn't sell them. You can get these on Amazon. It's actually, mine is from a dissecting kit back when I was in college. I think you can get them from a company called NASCO, N-A-S-C-O. They sell science supplies. So anyway, I love these. I love the little curve in them. That's my favorite part of the tweezers. Now we're ready to add our sentiment and our butterflies. So we're going to put the sentiment on first, and we're going to raise that sentiment up using Stampin' Dimensionals. These are a good adhesive, but they're also a good way to add just a little extra visual interest to your project. So I'm going to set these both up and get them on the card. Notice I'm using 4. It's a pretty strong adhesive, so it's not like I need 4 to hold the piece on. It's just that I wanted more balance for my large structure that's going on. And look how handy this pokey end of my Take Your Pick tool is. You got to have one of these. I never thought I needed one until I got it, and then it was like, I don't know how I lived without it. So I did not think very carefully about the butterfly on here. We're going to have to figure out where that second butterfly is going to go. I know where my first one's going to go, but I'm not sure where that second one's going to go. This one is a better layout for putting in that second butterfly. But the point is that you can use this layout either way. And basically, it's 2 butterflies and a piece of foliage. So I'm going to bring in my glue dots. This is a great adhesive, flexible, small. If it's too big, even though it's small, if it's too big for the space you want to use, you can always crunch it up, roll it, mold it into any shape you want. All right, for the first one, I know exactly where I'm going to put these butterflies. One is going to go right up here. And that's all I need to hold it on, and then his wings kind of go. And the second one is going to go a little bit lower, and this is going to match my original plan. I think that whole power outage thing from earlier made me kind of forget my basic plan for where the parts were going to go. I'm going to rotate him a little bit because I want to be able to read all the words. Okay, we're going to still come back and bling it up a little bit, but let's move over here and think about the butterflies on this one. Because when you have a sketch, when you have a plan that you're working from, the point to it is that this is just to get your brain thinking about the parts and thinking about it creatively, but then you could always come back and change it up any way you want. You could turn these into little dragonflies or little bees or any hearts. You know, you could have hearts flying around in the sky if you want for a Valentine's card, but you can change it up any way you want. And I'm going to have to change it up here. I didn't leave enough room to, makes it kind of bottom heavy. What do you think? It's a little bottom heavy, but that's okay. I like having some white space on my cards. Actually, that's not bad. I think I'm going to do it that way. I was a little worried that it was going to fall off the bottom of the card, but it's not. There's still room to get it in the envelope. Okay, now what about blinging it up? So there's my stamped and my die cut. Here's my die cut and my stamped, and everything's better with rhinestones, right? So let's add a few. Rhinestones are awesome. You see me using rhinestones on almost all my projects. They come in 3 sizes on this card. I don't know if you can tell, big ones and little ones, and then there's actually some in here that are sort of a medium size. I used all little ones on this project today. Rhinestone placement is kind of a unique art in itself, but when I use rhinestones, I use them to kind of draw your attention, to lead the eye into what I want you to be paying attention to. And the butterflies are pretty and the flowers are pretty, but I wanted to draw attention to the sentiment, so that's kind of where I end up placing them. So hey, I hope this was useful for you in realizing that you can take a similar concept and turn it into either a vertical layout or a horizontal layout. If you want to see more videos like this, starting with a basic idea for where you're going to place your stuff and then turning it into cards, then make sure that you have followed my Facebook page. If you're watching this on YouTube, then make sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. And a final reminder real quick, June 2024, there is a sale on bundles right now. I'll put a link in the description as well for you to shop some of the bundles and see some of these awesome products that are currently on sale this month. Hey, we will see you next Monday. I do these every Monday. I'm Katie Johnson. Have an incredible week, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.